I don't think anybody else has this right now, correct?
Nobody has it.
Nobody has this right now because they've just been talking about Michigan. We've been talking about Michigan all day because, especially Wayne County, they're expecting 100,000 votes in Wayne County.
Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and supposedly Louder with Crowder has some exclusive
and
election tampering interference in Michigan.
What happened? Give us some context. What's been going on in Michigan?
Absolutely. So I got a call from some fellow Texas lawyers who are actually in Michigan.
Okay.
And there's a group of them, men and women, but it was 3 women specifically who were involved, who connected with me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Just here in the last hour.
You women?
And they sent up... Yes, they are women. They do. They have eyebrows. They both raise. Yeah.
Nice.
And so they reached out to say that they had some very serious concerns about what was happening last night. Now I know, even though I was asleep and you guys were awake, messaging about what exactly is going on with the count in the various states, but there's really no clarity, no ability to really see what's happening.
Right.
And what these ladies were able to do, one of the ladies is actually going to be Skyping in, so if you see that, make sure to bring her on. But they took some photos and videos from Cobo Hall, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right now, called TCF Center, the main convention center in downtown Detroit, where there's a lot of ballot counting, voting, and that type of thing happening. In most of these places, they have security. They have security to make sure that ballots aren't being brought in after a certain time they're checking. The front check here was only COVID and masks, and people were bringing in what should have been only 4 to 6 hour shifts, bringing in huge coolers, huge bags, suitcases, other types of things with no checks whatsoever, while coincidentally, at the very same time, we're seeing spikes in the voting count and all kinds of numbers going in one certain direction. Yeah. So I will emphasize, it's not like any of these ladies ran over there and pried open one of the igloos or looked in one of the coolers or looked in one of the suitcases, but rather the lack of institutional security surrounding one of the most controversial districts and counties and voting locations is apparently null. And these ladies have actually tried to raise those issues there with election officials since this morning and have not been able to get any answers. Wow. They are being completely ignored. And it raises a lot of questions about what is happening for the institutional security at these key voting spots.
Well, so at absolute worst, it is complete and it's negligence, I guess, really.
Well, it's
severe.
It's huge. It's certainly at the very least negligence. And what we're looking at here is an undermining of the trust that would have in that particular system. I mean, we've heard from folks on the left who are saying, oh, you know, how are we going to trust the system? How are we going to know what's happening? But even at the most basic security at main voting locations and vote counting, you're letting people come in and do things that really cast a question and a doubt about what's happening.
Legally, is that even allowed? Isn't there supposed to be a process to make sure that there are checks in security issues? You know, the security safeguards.
Absolutely, that's every single one of these locations is supposed to have kind of reasonable safeguards.
So I think it's interesting
but if election workers
that nobody is checking what's coming in.
The space are not being checked.
I mean, it could be as simple as it was lunch or something from a long day's work, but nobody checked.
Particularly when you see at somehow 4:30, 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning, a huge number of votes for one side.
Right.
All of a sudden,
by the way, when they were supposed to
making
stop
it on
counting.
the ledger. Right.
We had to stop it because they said we're going to stop counting. We're like, oh, I guess they're going to. And they said we're going to start again tomorrow at 10, I think is what they said. And then all of a sudden,
in 1 hour,
an hour later, there's a huge spike specifically in this area. So you guys let me know when we have that person on Skype. But let's go to the. Are we going to start with the videos or the pictures first?
I got videos here.
Okay, so let's go to the videos. This is in Detroit. These are the ballots. But all these ballots for Santa Claus. Oh yeah, I know that spot.
So these are pretty raw.
Yeah, these are pretty raw. So how long are these videos?
This one's 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So let's right here. Okay, all right. So let's look at this. So so right here for people who are watching. Again, we're just getting this. These are people bringing them in coolers. There's no one around.
That looks like a radio.
That does not look like a bustling ballot counting operation. That looks like dark. That looks like the kind of place where Hunter Biden would find his next fix.
And one of the things is there's certainly a lot to be happening. Wayne County has a lot of votes, but it's the dead of night. Yeah. The polls have been closed for hours and hours. Where are these?
And they were supposed to stop counting. That's what they said on air.
Right. And what are they doing at this particular moment that they need these type of containers at this particular time.
Wow. Okay. Let's keep fast forward. What was that voice that I just heard?
There's a white van.
Oh, it's someone
narrating.
And this little cart thing. See?
Wow.
He's getting something out of there.
There's just one guy. Yeah. And he's not even wearing a tie.
So the person who's going to be logging in, her name is Kelly S., and she's a licensed attorney here in Texas, again, up in the Detroit area, who monitoring with some other groups that are part of the Attorneys for Trump organization. They're monitoring, making sure that things get done correctly.
It's a wagon.
And you're going to see wagons and
That's
other
a wheel-wed wagon.
strange implements. So this is either a horror movie or something worse.
Wow. I mean, you wouldn't be able to trust that just because some ballots could fly off the back. That's a guy in a WrestleMania T-shirt with a KB Toys wagon.
Wow. So he's
I was
bringing
joking
these...
about the radio flyer.
No, but yeah, you're
That's
right.
actually
That's
a
the
radio
radio flyer.
You got the nice brand. On brand.
Yeah, the good thing, yeah, that's name brand.
Good for him.
Wow.
They spent the extra $20.
So think of the different points here where there's no security. There's no security. First off, we have no idea how these things got into the van. There's no one there right now escorting him from the van. There's no one meeting him as he brings it into there. Like, you would think that there should be a human conveyor belt of people. It should look like American Gangster when they're all cutting the cocaine naked, so that you're sure they don't have anything in their pockets. And this guy's just walking in. There isn't any kind of official there for hundreds of yards.
Goodness.
He's just bringing in a wagon right there, and we
actually have her on air. The person who
recorded it, and we have more videos. So let's and her name is
Kelly Sorrell.
Kelly Sorrell. Kelly Sorrell. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us. Hey, and look at this. Even after a long night, you look better than the people over there on CNN, and you actually have lighting and sound that functions. Kelly, I don't want to get this wrong here. My half-Asian lawyer Bill is here. That was you videotaping this, and I don't want to be redundant, but I don't think this can be stressed enough. This was happening in one of the major areas of Michigan, right in Detroit. We just watched one video where a guy was bringing it in a red wagon, these ballots. Explain to me what you saw and why you brought it to half-Asian Bill's attention and officials. Why is this so concerning?
Well, I actually went up there. All the polls were closed, and I went up there after we had all gotten back to the hotel. I was kind of watching the news and decided I was going to go check on, it's called Kobo. And so I thought I'd go downtown and check out how the absentee ballots were being counted and see if they were still counting, because I had actually heard on the news that they weren't going to be counting anymore.
That's exactly. So we were doing the election stream all night. And keep in mind that into that point, when we were about to go to bed, they said we're going to reconvene. I think they said at 9 a.m. or they said at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, an hour later, there was a huge jump in Michigan for Biden. So yes, we were there last night. People can corroborate it. 8 million people watched. They said no more counting, and that's when you started filming this video, right?
Well, yeah. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go down there and just check and make sure that they actually are cutting it off, because I would hate to leave or not be down there checking on things and they be doing something shady. So I went down and I actually got in, and they screened me for COVID. They took my temperature, made sure I had my mask. I kind of roamed around, and I was like, I'm going to go grab some coffee and then come back and park for the night, because they were active. So I left, and as I was walking out the door, I see this white van pull up. And as I stopped for a second, turned on my phone, you saw the video where I kind of like walk around, and I see he's pulling out like an old radio flyer wagon and is like connecting it. And then I get in the car and I see him like drop the box. And that was pretty much, we had worked polling stations for the night. And that's, very similar to the box that we had seen and been watching and monitoring to make sure that got locked and removed from the polling stations, put in vehicles, and driven to the secure locations.
Right.
So it was just one of those where I was like, that's kind of weird. So I went and grabbed my coffee, came back, and just was sitting and just observing. I tried to go in. I'm not a Michigan resident, so I'm not allowed to actually go and roam around on the floor.
Right.
But I could observe. It was a glass window. I could observe. There was no security at the door. Nobody was checking bags or credentials or, who was coming in, even identification, anything. People were just able to go in. I'm assuming if they were actually counting ballots, they would get something somewhere.
Right.
But just for regular folks, and there were other attorneys in our group that actually got in later and just roamed the floor.
Yeah, one sec. Mute their mics over there just for right now, because right now we can hear them typing. Okay, so that was the first video, and I understand that we have some other videos as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct there, Quarter Black Carrot?
I do.
So can you tell us what the next video will be? Quarter Black Carrot, give us a description, and then we'll go to our
it looks like we're inside of the area.
Inside of the
Looks like
building.
inside
the inside of the building. Okay. So we're
looks
going
like
to
the
watch this
actual
here. Stay
counting
with us.
area.
I just want to make sure that people can see this so we can sort of give people a visual aid. Let's show the inside of the building, this video here. Okay, so this is where they were going inside, and that's where they're supposed to be counting those ballots, I assume. And so, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of your lovely guest here.
Kelly.
Kelly, right here, can you turn on the volume on the clip a little bit?
Yeah.
So Kelly, right here we see them coming in suitcases. Is this the same place at the area where they are now? Is that where you saw them bringing in the red wagon? Because in here it looks like there are quite a few people. That's a ballot counting operation.
Right. So I can't really tell which video clip you're looking at, but so it's basically like a convention center, the
Right.
building that we're in. So there's where we came in, or where I came in, was kind of up on the upper level, and then you go down, and there's entrances for everyone, and they're dragging luggage, they're dragging bags, they're dragging igloo, like ice chest. They're there doing 5 to 6 hour shifts, and yeah, I mean they were taking those items in with them into the clear glass windowed room that's to the back, and that's the area I couldn't cross into. So we weren't able, there we go. So that glass area to the back is where they would go through to go in to count the ballots.
Right.
And so this front area is the lobby area, and they would come in from outside and bring those items into that secure area that's in the back where they actually have the ballots.
And that's where they were counting, and this is at that time when we had been told they had stopped counting. They weren't supposed to be counting.
Correct. And the concern was just the security concern. We don't really know what was going on with, or what items they were bringing in, or who was going in, or any of those things.
Yeah. So what is your primary, how does this differ from the normal experience, at where they would count ballots? Do people, right now what we're seeing is people bringing in by themselves with no security, red wagons and Coleman coolers, bringing them behind a glass area where no one has access. How does that differ from how ballot counting should look, or how it usually looks? Because keep in mind, for a lot of people, they've never seen any of this at work.
Well, I would think you could kind of look at how we vote, right? I mean, we go into a polling location. It's very formal. There's a process. We go through. They check your identification. They, validate who you are, verify that you're a person that's eligible to vote, that you're in the right precinct, you're in the right area. So, I would think that if we're going to go through all of those steps to make sure that our voting is protected, that we're doing it properly, you would think that our end result would have the same level of security.
Right.
And we don't see that here. And so the difference is basically they're just letting whoever in with whatever items. They're not verifying any of it. You see the two ladies standing there, but they're not stopping to say, hey, are you even supposed to be here?
Right. And so what would be the risk there of those people walking in with no stop? Here, hold on. We're going to have my half-Asian lawyer, Bill Richmond, here come in. What would be the risk of those people right now? They're walking with what appear to be giant, Santa sacks, or they're walking in with pillowcases full of something. We see people walking in with coolers. What, I guess, is your concern? They could be walking in with fake ballots? They could just,
Fake ballots, absolutely. I mean, this is a battleground state. We came up here to Michigan to help Trump because this is a state that's under fire. This is one that we needed to be monitoring for fraud.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to monitor for fraud when nobody's checking.
Yeah. There really is nobody checking there. And I don't know if someone would argue, well, they're checking once you're past the glass. I don't know if someone would argue that.
They're not. They go in, they roam around, they sit down. I don't know what all goes on.
And so one of the important things here is, and we can raise a good point, is look, maybe somebody's got some sandwiches, maybe someone's got some drinks, but at the very least we have a very clear appearance of a problem. And given how many concerns we've had, particularly in Democrat-controlled jurisdictions, about election security, you imagine that the most heightened election security concerns that we've ever had, highlighted for weeks and weeks. On the day of the election in a battleground state, in one of the largest precincts in that battleground state, you have lax security at a time when the ballots are coming in. Now, again, the ballots, it's not like all of a sudden, a million Biden votes happened right after these igloos went in, but rather the very clear that at the least, we've got a lack of security that raises questions about the election itself, and particularly in this jurisdiction. And at the worst, we have people who are without the ability to vet it, who's in there.
Well, this is also listen, as someone who has spent quite a bit of time in Detroit, you have more security at a racquetball court. It's Detroit. You have someone there guarding something. There is nobody checking at all.
Yeah, they're just walking in.
And at what time was this? Were these videos taken approximately, Kelly?
That was actually ironically, the issue with Wisconsin came in at shift change. All of that, where you see most of that luggage coming in, is at their shift change at 4:35 in the morning.
Wow! Because you know what, we had to end the stream. Was it right about 4 o'clock? Right about 4 o'clock in the morning is when we ended. We wanted to stay here throughout the entire night, and then they said we are going to reconvene later today and count. And then I took an hour nap in a hammock. I'm not exaggerating, and I woke up and Michigan had entirely changed. It happened right at that time.
It happened right in front of my eyes, and all I could think was, what the heck? All I saw was all this stuff going in.
Now, what would you say to people who just say, well, that's also because all these votes are just Wayne County, and that's heavily liberal? Would we expect that kind of a turnaround? I mean, there was a huge lead going into, or a big lead at that point by many. What was it? 6 points, Michigan, 8 points at that point before about 4:30 a.m. What would you say to people who would argue that?
So this is actually just kind of an interesting thought, because we thought going into last night,
turn down the clip.
We were doing great in Michigan. We had been working Michigan.
Right.
All of us spent yesterday, all of the attorneys, we spent roaming around, checking precincts, looking at, we did Detroit, we did the suburbs, we did all the different areas to see how many people were, at the polling locations. And I will tell you that suburbia, loaded. You could tell. People were packed in there. They were busy all day. You go into inner city Detroit, nobody was in there. So we were like, shoot, we got this. Like, yeah, heck yeah, we did good.
Right.
And then we come into this, and it's like, what the heck? All of these absentee ballots pop up, and we're just, okay.
Well, but couldn't it just be that people voted early, and that's what they're finally bringing in? I mean, that's what people would argue, right? Well, these are just early ballots, and they're counting them now, and that's a liberal county.
Well, okay, so another thing, too, is that when I left this morning, they were looking, or right after I left, they announced that they basically were around 16,000 uncounted absentee ballots.
Right.
That's what they were working on. And then by 10 a.m., it jumped to about 30 to 35,000. There was like about a 10-minute gap between 30 and 35.
Right.
And then the next thing we know, we're up to 120-something thousand.
Absentee ballots. And they were only expecting 16? They were only expecting 16,000?
Yeah, the first thing this morning, that's what they were looking at.
So I have a video that she might want to weigh in on. This is from Matt Finn at Fox News, and this, I believe, is the same place. It's the scene at Detroit's absentee ballot counting center. It's growing more heated, and the people are saying that there are allegations of violations, and they're covering up the windows so that people can't see what they're doing inside. Okay,
so Kelly, you're able to see what we're showing you right now, correct? Okay, go.
I actually lived it already this afternoon. Our attorneys, I've actually been here at the hotel. I've not slept yet. And so we were working on some of this stuff. But some of the other attorneys with the group, they were kicked out. They weren't allowed in. And so they've been down here at the hotel and not able to go anywhere. So
well, let's show this video here that's going on at Fox News. So if you can confirm it. Do we have that video here? Let's show it. So this is what they were doing. Why would they put up? What? Is that commonplace? Can someone let me know?
That's a video from the inside.
From the inside. That's from inside. Again, this is not coming from Kelly. The other videos that we just showed, the wheel-wed wagons and the people going with no security, that was separate. Kelly, that's exclusive to us. This is what they're showing at Fox News. Is that common practice at any polling station to cover it up with Bristol boards?
Wow.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to show that you're transparent and that these are legitimate elections, you should have that open ability to look in and at least observe to make sure that people are following protocols and there's some kind of, process that's being, compliant.
I thought that was the purpose to doing it. I've never been to a polling station where it wasn't all glass.
I mean, I've seen more of the inside of a McDonald's than I've seen of that polling place once they put those boards up.
And then you scalded your crotch with coffee.
It was great.
Well, so it's really funny because I started, as soon as I got back this morning, I tried to start kind of discussing with different people the concerns I had and the things I had witnessed overnight. And so it got around in just this little group, in this little area. So I'm pretty sure it was probably discussed over there, and that's probably their response was somebody's in there recording, and so let's, lock them out.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we have a lot of people watching right now. So let me ask you this. What do you think, and I know you have to be careful legally, what do you think happened? What do you think was going on? If you have to guess what happened at that was the Devil's Hour 3:33, is that where something happens all the time? I don't know. I saw it in a horror movie, but 4:30. Yeah. What do you think happened? We saw people bringing in wagons and coolers unchecked and then putting up boards to cover up the glass. Do we just think they're saying, hey, we want to keep this secure, we don't want anyone to get shot through the glass? Is it just there were so many votes they were overburdened? So what do you think happened there in Detroit?
Well, I generally don't think you try to hide something if you're being transparent and honest.
Right.
I mean, that's generally, that's kind of how we see things, right?
Yeah.
If you're upfront and doing the right thing, right, then you're happy to have people observe and see that you're doing what you're supposed to do by the people in your community, right?
Right.
So, I mean, the only thing that would lead me to believe is that they are doing something
that is inherently dishonest, and it would seem to coincide with something that was almost nonsensical as far as the number jump. What kind of a challenge, I guess, can there be to this practice? As you're a lawyer and my half-Asian lawyer, Bill Richmond, is here. What do we do? How do we fight this?
I'm not jumping in on that because I am not a Michigan attorney, and I'm just going to sit back and see where the administration wants to go, or where the RNC wants to go, or where the GOP here in Michigan wants to go.
Yeah.
And what I would say is there's probably a million different ways. We saw from the Supreme Court rulings leading up to the election, there's a lot of different ways you can invalidate or otherwise allow voting to happen and create spoiled votes or invalid votes. Kelly's right. There's going to be a lot of decisions to be made by the party directly affected, so the RNC or the GOP in Michigan and nationally. But what it does is raises a lot of questions. What we'll really have to know is what is happening inside of that room, right? What is happening, what problems have been created from the lack of security. And again, at the very least, let's say Biden wins, it raises questions. Let's say Trump wins, it raises questions.
Right.
All it does is delay. And again, in one of the most central precincts in a battleground state for this to be happening, and then for this afternoon for it to, you're really doubling down on the problems by saying we may have had a problem, but we're going to definitely cover up any resolution of the problem because then you'll believe it's getting done. It raises a lot of questions.
Well, I mean, for some context with Florida, they just thought it was too close for comfort, and so they wanted recounts. It's not the same thing as, and there were the butterfly ballots, I think. Was that what they were, the butterfly ballots, that what they called them, the term? In this case, there are a lot of boxes being checked. There is a confusing process, and then there is no security, and then for some reason they are proactively deciding to cover up the remainder of that process. And all of this happened. All of the video that you just saw happened around the time when we went to bed and we were told that we're not going to be doing any more counting. That looked, when you look in that room, that looked like elves before Christmas.
A lot of people up in there.
And Kelly, keep us in the loop. Let's definitely see where things are going. Michigan is still an important state. There's a number of percentage that's out. It's a very close battleground. We're curious to know what else happens. But thank you to you and the other attorneys who are up there working on this and keeping an eye out for what can only be described as shenanigans.
What can only be described as. And have you been aware, Kelly? Have you heard about what's been going on in Arizona with the Sharpies?
No.
Okay, so yes, you've been focused on Michigan. This just happened. We just had a video. We had people who apparently, did you know about this,
No.
Bill? Pollsters were handing out Sharpies and saying, this is how you fill in the ballot with a Sharpie. And there's very clear instruction. It's written when people are talking about filling out a ballot. Do not use a Sharpie because it will likely be impossible to read. And we have people who've been sending us direct messages saying that they actually were given a Sharpie to fill in their ballot, and there were people on video saying that there were Sharpies being used to fill in a ballot. So that is anecdotal, but there are now many, many hundreds of anecdotes in Arizona, specifically Maricopa County, where people were being given Sharpies by volunteers or officials who were involved with the actual polling stations. That happened in Arizona, to the best of our knowledge. Now, how much of a sway?
All right, so I love Steven, and I think that there's something fishy with the whole Sharpie thing, but at the same time, on one of my earlier videos where I showed the Sharpie incident, I also showed the Maricopa County instructions where the Maricopa County Election Committee explained their new voting system and that they recommended using a Sharpie and that the bleed through isn't a big deal because it only reads within the circle or whatever. But then I also showed in that same video people who seemed very concerned that their ballot did not get read. And then I got a lot of flack in that same video saying that I was trying to fearmonger or start a conspiracy theory when I was just very patently saying that if there are people concerned about this Sharpie issue and they believe that their votes did not get counted, then that's something that should probably be looked into. However, I don't know that their vote didn't get counted. I wasn't personally there, and I don't know how trustworthy these individuals are, but they seem to believe that their vote was not counted, and thus the Sharpie thing seems to be an issue in Arizona when it might not be an issue, but it could be an issue. Whatever it is, it's worth looking into at the very least. Anyway, I believe we've gotten to the end of the quote-unquote evidence showing possible election problems in Michigan, and I was honestly expecting a little bit more smoking gun. However, at the same time, while you might be able to say, you know, the guy with the wagon was probably bringing in lunch, and all the coolers are probably people's, you know, breakfast or lunch, and, you know, these people coming in and out during shift change seem to make sense, etc., etc. However, covering up the windows doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense to cover up the windows, and I'm wondering what's going on here in Crowder. I'm going to turn the volume back on.
Counting votes is intense. The sense of the difference between yesterday and today at this little corner of Detroit is equally intense. Clearly, both sides now fighting very hard, looking at how this process will play out.
Nope. Let's be really clear. Both sides are not fighting over the integrity of the process. Only one is. Yeah. There's only one side. Let's be really clear here. When people say, "Oh, about trust, restoring trust in our institutions," there's only one side fighting for transparency.
All right, so I don't think it's anything important or relevant to what this video is supposed to be about. So I understand that this video was a little on the lengthy side and that the majority of it was basically Steven Crowder's election stream, but you know, it's just a part of his election stream. He's obviously been on for quite a while, but that particular portion where there was quote-unquote possible election issues that he was bringing to light, I thought would be very interesting for everyone to see. I still think it's very interesting. I still think it's definitely worth sharing, and so I'm going to do so. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Maybe you've already even seen it. I'm sure a lot of people that watch me probably pay attention to Steven Crowder too, and may very well be watching this same stream that I've been watching. But nonetheless, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you're interested in the information or the lack thereof of any real security going on at the Detroit Convention Center during the middle of their shift change, and how somehow during the middle of their shift change all of these absentee ballots that close the election in Michigan seem to come in all at the same time, you know, that's definitely something to be concerned about. But yeah, anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.